those sessions. Merci, Sadiq. To facilitate this exchange and session, we would like, if you can put, as I see many of you did already, if you can put your name and organization, that will help this session exchange. You have also, I think you already have, but Sadiq can put in the chat the link to the Miro board. The Miro board is there to kind of summarize, provide you an illustration and a summary of the different presentation and solution that will be presented. So you can just access the Miro anytime during the session or after the session. It just popped up now in the chat. And of course, you are most welcome to leave all your questions or your comments or input in the chat. We noticed last time that it's better to leave it in the chat so we can answer directly to the person, because in the Miro you can put also comments or anything in the Miro, but if you can leave it in the chat, it would facilitate this exchange. So just a quick reminder of what is this workshop. So it's focusing on electricity provision in displacement settings. By displacement setting, we include both displaced person and host communities. And why energy provision is important in displacement setting. It has been energy transition and provision has been considered a relevant and effective catalyst to achieve the SDG and support the no one left behind policy in the SDGs. Also a quick reminder why it's important. It's numbers, a broad number, which give that 90% of energy consumption by displaced person is to buy for cooking fuel. So it remains for them only 10% to spend energy, or what they can on energy, only 10% to electricity or other type of energy. So just to show you that there's a huge demand of a need for electricity in order to improve protection, improve resilience and livelihood. Also a reminder, this workshop is not meant to propose or recommend any solution. Each project is unique, and actually this is the purpose of this workshop, is to show that due to each specific situation and environmental constraints, each solution, service and product delivered will be unique in the sense that they will be the best suitable to fit a particular situation and demand profile. So today's two presentation, we will jump to it. They will focus on market-based approach, and they will show you the different tools, mechanism, partnership they developed to promote displaced person access to electricity and access to new technology. For instance, in most cases, displaced person, as you know, has no ID, no credit history, little opportunity to work, or restricted movement. And of course, as for the market, energy market, as we all know, it's highly regulated with a situation of physical monopoly to distribution line, important asset legacy that make it this market very reluctant to change. So those two presentations will show you how they addressed those barriers to reach and to provision electricity to displaced population. Let me introduce you Merijd from SNV, who will start with his solution presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and hi to everyone. So my name is Marijn Havinga, and I work as an energy expert and project manager for SNV, based in Nairobi, Kenya. So for this session, I would like to talk a little bit about our project called the Market-Based Energy Access Project, funded by Energizing Developments, which we are implementing in Kakuma refugee camp and Kalobei settlements. Next slide. So we'll actually just follow the format as the other presentations that we have within this session. So we can move to the next slide. Just to start with a bit of a background on what we're trying to do. So the Market-Based Energy Access Project, or MBEA project, is actually designed to shift from a sort of a classic humanitarian approach to meeting energy needs of refugees to a market-based approach that uses commercial approaches to remove some of the key barriers for companies to actually move into the camp and set up their business and sell products to refugees. So just a few highlights. We started in 2017, initially as a pilot, just to understand how to develop this model and how to what kind of support is actually needed for companies to set up business in the camp. And in 2019, we scaled up based on the learnings from the pilot. And to date, the project has been able to support the sales of around 12,000 solar lanterns and solar home systems, as well as clean cook stoves. But that's another component I won't focus on today. So that has led to 38,000 people having reached access to electricity, as well as 375 jobs created among the electricity value chain. Currently, we have 6 solar companies that are in our portfolio within the project. Next slide. So if we look at the energy access situation in Kakuma and Kalobei, we see that in generally in Turkana County, there is a lack of grid access. So in Kakuma town, there's a Kenya Power mini-grid, a diesel mini-grid, but in general, in the camps, there's no formal electricity access. So what you see is that there's a lot of informal diesel mini-grids. They're operated by local entrepreneurs, being used by small businesses, but often those systems have substandard wiring, and there's a very high cost of electricity for those businesses and households. There's also an increasing amount of mini-grids, and that's something that Jackson talked about, I think, in the last meeting. So there's the Renuvia mini-grid, which is installed with NF support in Kalobei, up to a total of 80 kilowatts. And then there's another mini-grid, which is actually set up by a local entrepreneur in Kakuma 3, which is the Okapi Green Energy mini-grid. So in terms of solar, this has really sort of grown over the last years and is now the key source of lighting for over 40% of the displaced population. Next slide. If we look at the country context for off-grid energy in Kenya, there's a few trends that have actually enabled this project to be designed and implemented. So in Kenya, in general, we see a maturing market for plug-and-play solar home systems. So there's quite a lot of companies in the market who are selling standardized models, often with 3 or 4 light points and a separate charger. Also, we see a widespread adoption of pay-as-you-go payment models, as well as the use of M-Pesa, because of the high penetration of Safaricom in the country, which also allows even refugees to access M-Pesa payments. Then we see another trend, which is an increasing focus on productive appliances, or normal appliances that can be used with solar home systems. So those can be fans or TVs, but also larger appliances like fridges or agricultural appliances like solar water pumps. Then lastly, we see a strategic focus from the Kenyan government and the Ministry of Energy on energy provision for underserved counties. And this is also what the Kenya Off-Grid Solar project that is being implemented by the Ministry of Energy is focusing on. So all those different trends actually allowed this project to be developed. So we were able to leverage these trends and this market development to now also provide energy access through a market-based model in a displacement setting. Next slide. If we look at the technical solutions that we're focusing on within this project, there's the smaller systems, previous slides. So those start with solar lanterns up to 5 watts, solar home systems from 10 to 200 watts. And for businesses, we see a lot of like small businesses like kiosks using the plug and play solar home systems as well for lighting in the evening, continuing selling in the evening, as well as using phone charging as a business, and using TVs, for example, to have a small cinema where people can go to and watch football games or things like that. And then we look at the component-based solar systems, AC powered, starting at 200 watts up to 2 kilowatts, that can power fridges or barbershops or multimedia systems. So an example is a radio station, which is being powered by a solar system. Next slide. So looking at the partnerships, a key partnership for us is UNHCR, of course, on a strategic and implementation level, just to align our activities and make sure that we sort of align with the goals of UNHCR, that we work with companies that are actually able and allowed to operate in the camp. So we also provide sort of a bridge between private sector and UNHCR. If they want to have access to the camp, then we can facilitate that. Then Turkana County government is key to inform our strategy, to understand what kind of strategy they have for electricity access in the county and to adapt sort of our programming on that as well. Then humanitarian organizations are key also to involve in this transition to market-based models. As we see some organizations who are sometimes more focused on provision of goods, and we really sort of want to make sure that everyone is aligned on this model, this idea of market-based energy access. And then we try to find synergies in programming. So, for example, we're working with some vocational training institutes that can link their students to solar companies as technicians, for example. So then we work with the private sector. These are companies from outside the camp that we support to move into the camp, as well as the local entrepreneurs that we help to build sales networks for energy products and link them with the suppliers of those solutions. Lastly, we work with other development programs, as mentioned, the COSA project, which is also active in Turkana County, as well as the Kakuma Kalebe Challenge Fund, which is providing funding for companies on an operational level. So we really try to synergize our activities with those programs as well. Next slide. So just to talk about our model for a bit, based on the structure that was provided for this workshop. Our project is funded by Energizing Development. So SNV is implementing this project with an office based in Kakuma. And what we provide to the companies is two things. So we provide technical assistance, and this can be a very sort of practical guidance for companies to set up their business. So we link them with local vendors, we help them with logistics, we help them to get sort of access to the camp, to find stocking points, to hire or recruit local staff. So sort of a very practical, need-based support. And then we have another component, which is activity-based financing. which is focused on sales and marketing. So companies who are promoting their products through market activations, who are training sales agents, they can actually implement those activities, and then we will reimburse those funds after they've implemented them. So in that way, we also ensure the commitment of the companies to actually just execute their own business model, and we remove some of the key barriers for them to set up their operations in the camp. So then those companies, they actually work in a normal market setting. So they directly engage the end customer through a network of sales agents. And they normally provide the products via pay-as-you-go and mobile money. And this is both targeted to the refugee community as well as the host community. So for companies, there's not necessarily a limitation in who they target. And we also sort of promote really to target the host community as well. So in this case, there's no direct funding coming from the UN clusters. That is actually the case for cooking fuel, but for electricity, it's an open market where refugees can decide if they are interested in purchasing these products. Next slide. So just talking about a few of the lessons learned and best practices from this project. First being ensuring commitment of the private sector in building a sustainable value chain in Kakuma. And this is really about having companies sort of see the opportunity. Because it can sometimes be the case that because there's a project or funding available, companies show interest. While actually, if they are not convinced that it can work in the long term, that will really sort of affect the sustainability of this market. So we really want to ensure in the beginning that the companies are committed to the long term. Then being flexible and adaptive in the types of support measures is important because they can differ. So for companies, it's a very pragmatic approach. What do you actually need to move into the camp? And this can differ per company. Some of them, they need help in recruitment. Others, they have some issues with transport, or they don't have the ability to train local entrepreneurs. So we're quite flexible in that. Then involving both the host and refugee community in the project execution and activities is important. So we really want the companies as well to target the host community, that we don't purely focus on the refugee community. And we also involved both of them in the execution. So we have a team of local capacity builders from the refugee community as well as the host community that are implementing our activities. All stakeholders, they must be included and willing to commit to achieving this transition, something I already mentioned a little bit. So we see some cases where there are still sort of a initiative where large amounts of products are being donated, which can really distort the market. So we really want to make sure that all the stakeholders in the humanitarian community in Kakuma are sort of aligned on this goal of market-based energy access. Then coordinating closely with partner organizations to maximize synergies and complementarity. I think also what I mentioned about for example, the Kakuma Kaulebei Challenge Fund, to, for example, link them with the companies that we're in contact with to sort of synergize these different programs. Then marketing efforts, they have to be complemented with sensitization and awareness raising activities. And this is mainly something that we did in the early phase of the project. So when we started, we experienced quite a lot of hesitation and unwillingness from the refugee community to purchase products because that was not really what they were used to, because there was a lot of donation for solar lanterns and other products. So yeah, we invested quite a lot in activities in which we promoted sort of quality products, Lighting Global or Verso certified products, and seeing the benefit in paying for these products and the after sales service, etc. So that actually allowed then to for companies to come in and continue with their individual marketing activities. Then the last one is addressing access to finance barriers and payment challenges. I think, yeah, what I mentioned for M-Pesa, a lot of people can access M-Pesa, but there's still a challenge in terms of not having a national ID. So a lot of refugees, they can only use an M-Pesa account for a few months and then have to get another phone number, which then makes it difficult for companies to keep track. So there's some ways around it, but this is actually quite a complicated challenge for companies. And then we also really want to ensure that everyone is able to access these products. And this is something we haven't fully solved, but there's always like different groups in the camp, some who can afford it, some who can't. So we really want to make sure that there's financing possibilities for all those different groups to get access to energy. I think that's about it. So thank you for your attention, and back to you, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Mergin. Thank you for this very detailed and very informative presentation. We have quite some questions. Thank you very much for your question. If any one of you, please ask your question verbally, so loud, or just write the question on the chat. There is one question related to from Louise, related to the value chain. She asked, what would you recommend for ensuring commitment of the private sector in building sustainable value chain?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Louise. I think commitment in the end cannot be enforced. So to some extent, the companies just have to be convinced by sort of experiencing yeah, what the camp is like and sort of entrepreneurial spirit that can be observed there. But in the end, what we do see is that companies who actually invest a bit more, so for example, they set up a shop in Kakuma town, or they really sort of yeah, put in their own money, those are the ones who are committed to make it work. So it's really already looking towards after this project will close. So I think that's also really our aim, that this is support to help companies set up their business, but after that, they have to do it themselves. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you very much. I'm struggling now to read I will go in the chat, sorry. So many screens here. Another question, which is, I will find the chat. Sorry, merci, thank you. Thanks, Mary. Did you encounter conflicts between new entrepreneurs and the existing ones, those providing energy through informal mini grids, and any tip from your experience to avoid such conflicts?
Yeah, thank you, Judith. We haven't really experienced those conflicts, but that being said, it's really sort of, in that sense, an open market. So businesses who were connected to these diesel mini grids, they sometimes switch to solar, but in some cases they even combine. So I think if we would see sort of from one week to another, everyone switching from those informal mini-grids, then they might, a conflict might arise. But I think it's quite sort of a gradual development. So we haven't really experienced any conflict there.
Thank you. Okay. Another question is, what would you need or would be needed to scale up this up to the entire population? Can this be done by a private company, by private companies alone? So we have two questions there.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. Yeah, it's a very good question. I think that we can get quite far, or the private sector can get quite far in targeting the whole population. However, similar to sort of a normal market setting in Kenya, not everyone wants to buy a solar product. So yeah, people can choose if they want to buy it. Some they choose not to use solar power. I do think that there's a gap, what I mentioned a little bit, for some communities who really do not have spending power. That's also a bit where we have a limitation as a project, because your question about subsidizing products, no, we don't subsidize products. We also really want to create a market where companies can compete. So in that sense, subsidizing products would complicate sort of a competition model. But I do think that there is potential for some sort of a basic lighting sort of provision for communities that really don't have anything to spend.
Thank you very much. I have a question myself regarding do you have or you had to apply to specific permit or authorization to provide certain products like certification or anything, or this was already all set by the local markets?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So for the companies who apply for this project, we require them to sell products that are Verusol certified. So they need to have a certain quality standard. That also includes a 2-year warranty. And then the exception would be for component-based solar systems. And there we mainly look at the after sales and warranty that those companies can offer.
Thank you. And there was also another question. If you can name the most challenging parts of the technical assistance or implementation of this phase.
I think maybe a challenge for us is balancing responsibilities of the companies and what we can do. I think sometimes we are very willing to support, but at some point we also have to take a step back, and sort of timing that step that can be a bit of a challenge.
Thank you. And last one, and anyone, if you want to ask more questions, please type in the chat. And for me, last one would be how one practical example how you addressed the lack of ID and credit history or worthiness of the displaced person, because I know that's one of the barriers for to attract the private sectors.
Yeah, I think this is up to companies. So what we see is that the issue of M-Pesa payments, there's a way around it. So sometimes sales agents actually serve as a intermediary between the customers and companies. because they have sort of fixed M-Pesa accounts. So then refugees would pay to the sales agents in installments, and they would pay in mobile money to the pay-as-you-go provider. Yeah, so those kind of solutions are ways to get around this challenge. And I think for companies also adapting the installment payments or sort of playing a bit with upfront payments compared to the installment payments is how they can sort of make it a bit more attractive for refugees to purchase their products.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you. Another question, has the market-based approach enabled access to a higher tier of energy access as opposed to earlier donations approach? Was it an impact on the level of electricity service?
Yeah, definitely. I think what we observed since 2017, as I mentioned in the first slide, we have supported the sales of 12,000 products. Mm-hmm. So before that, there were no quality verified products being sold in the camp. There was a small pilot, which was done by the Moving Energy Initiative, together with one solar company, Bbox. But other than that, there was no sort of a formal company present with higher tier solar home systems. So we really sort of have seen the energy ladder moving up from solar lanterns towards the larger systems.
Thank you. That's very clear. Is there any other questions from the audience, or maybe we can slowly go to the break if there is no question. Thank you very much, Nerij, for the presentation, which was really concise, very clear and precise in everything that the different aspect of the solution and the different challenge that you addressed through your solution. Merci, thank you very much. I think it's a good moment to have the break. I will stop sharing, and we can meet at 45 again. Enjoy the coffee, the tea, and next, after the break, we will have Cecilia from Mercycoop presenting solar home system combined with electric cooking equipment. Thank you very much and enjoy the break. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you had a good break. So let me introduce you to Cecilia from Mercy Corp, who will present this e-cooking solution combined with solar home system. And I would also mention that all the work they are doing in really market-based approach and the delivery model and everything they have organized to be able to deliver this solution. Voila. Thank you, Cecilia.
Merci. Hi everybody. So I'm here today. I'm actually also accompanied. Can you hear me all right, Jonathan?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm actually also accompanied by Simon from Pesito, with whom we partnered for this project. This is a 2-year project funded by ELRA. We're implementing it in Bidibidi in Uganda. Again, it's a partnership between Pesito and Mercy Corp. Just a quick introduction to myself. My name is Cecilia Ragazzi, and I'm Mercy Corp's Senior Advisor for Access to Energy. And I'm basically going to walk us through the presentation of the framework of the project. And then Simon, who's going to introduce himself just now, is actually going to support on the Q&A. Simon, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Simon, founder and also CEO of Pesito. Nice being here.
All right, so Jonathan, if we can go to the next slide.
This one?
No, yeah, this one, yeah. So the dark one. Next. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we wanted really to start the introduction with a very dark picture. Is really like a metaphor, but also like the driver that brought us together. Of course, as I think that we're all aware, about the 3 billion people globally are still dependent on wood as their main energy sources for cooking. And this reality is even more dire in locations of displacement, because in this context, also host populations are often dependent on biomass for cooking. And this definitely creates environmental problems and has impact, but at the same time also increases the tensions and potential for conflicts between two communities. So for a humanitarian standpoint, of course, this becomes really an urgency for us to try to address. If we think again about the displacement context, we also see that, of course, health services are often not very reliable and very present. So again, situations that are caused by inhaling particulate matter or smoke in general becomes even more acute. So much so that it's estimated that premature death due to respiratory illnesses are actually higher than death caused by malaria and HIV combined, which is quite shocking. This situation, as we said, it's really quite dark, but at the same time, we also see some glimpse of hope. We've seen that according to the tracking SDG 7 energy status report, more than 400 million people actually have gained access to clean cooking fuels and technologies since 2010. So definitely improvements have been made, but we have to keep fighting this battle. If we don't do that, it's estimated that only 72% of the global population will have access to clean energy fuels and technology by 2030. Again, as an humanitarian agency at Mercy Corp, we are very aware of the issues at stake, and we are trying in many of the countries where we operate to tackle the issues. So especially in South and Eastern Asia, We are quite active in creating value chains or strengthening value chains around improved clean stoves. But it's also true that in Pesito, we really found a partner with whom we share a vision, which is of course great, and we are enthusiastic in supporting their innovative technology moving forward and really reaching that scale that we hope to support them to get through this project. So again, as I mentioned before, this presentation should walk us through the main framework of Journey to Scale. And again, happy to try to answer along with Simon as many questions as possible in the session later. If we can move to the next slide, please. I don't see it on my screen, John. Yeah, right, correct. Okay, thanks. So the situation that I just mentioned so far is really like the global situation. Now I would like to take us down to the context where we are operating together. So we're talking again about Uganda, where 94% of the population is still reliant on biomass. And it's also quite interesting to notice that the population is meant to double by 2040, again, like increasing the stress on the depleting natural resources that are available in the area. Specifically, the project is taking place in a Bidi-Bidi that is home to 280,000 people. Again, the vast majority of them lack access to clean cooking and electricity. And these results in overusing natural resources. It's estimated that annually people in Bidi-Bidi are consuming 350,000 tons of wood fuel, which is really incredible and should really give the dimension of the crisis that is ongoing there, also on the environmental side of things. Next one, please. I don't see it, Jonathan.
Yes, Cecilia, I'm struggling to pass it even on my computer. So let me stop sharing and I will.
I can just describe the pictures that we have in that picture for the time being, and when it's ready, it's ready. Okay. Basically, in that slide, I wanted really to highlight a sort of spectrum of the landscape that we are seeing when we are talking about cooking technologies. So again, the vast majority of people in Bidi-Bidi are using a three-stone fire. So really like 3 stones together and a bunch of twigs and pieces of biomass to be used. It's the one prior.
Yes.
To that one, thanks. So of course, this technology uses a lot of biomass. It produces a lot of smoke. Again, has a detrimental impact on the forest around the settlement. People do have either to spend time or money to collect their fuel, and there are definitely costs associated to that, both on the operating side, but also in terms of health outcome. The plus side, of course, of this technology is that the technology itself is very, very cheap. I mean, we're again like really talking about rudimentary three stones fires. Well, if we step a little bit further, of course, we move toward the improved cook stoves. And improved cook stoves are still reliant on biomass, of course, even though they are meant to use less of that, although it's very hard to quantify the efficiency of certain improved cook stoves, so hard to tell. The smoke and air pollutions, of course, are still present, as is still present problems around the deforestation. Again, there are concerns regarding time and money spent to fuel these technologies, and also the fact that very often the distributor or the retailers maybe are not in a position to offer quality post-sale services associated to this technology, which of course, in turn, diminishes the trust of potential clients over this type of technologies. Again, I'm not going to go in a detail here, but in assessments that we have conducted that accompanied, of course, the elaboration of the proposal of this project, we have found confirmation of many points that have been highlighted in literature as well, such as families in BDBD are indeed selling or exchanging food rations for charcoal or wood as a fuel source, which of course it's quite counterintuitive if the ultimate outcome is food security, right? There are incidents over severe burns due to open fires. Children, and especially girls, are the primary responsible for collecting fuels, missing out on education opportunities, and we have seen definitely a rise in tension between refugees and host communities. So this was really like the sort of a spectrum that we wanted to share with you, the status quo that we saw before starting working with Pesito. And the technology that actually Pesito is promoting and that they have created, invented, is called ECOCA. Simon is going to tell us more about it most probably afterwards, but I'll do my best to try to illustrate the main beauties of this product. So the ECOCA is a compact and a self-contained multi-purpose unit that consists of an electric base that has a battery pack included. And attached to that, there's a solar panel, which is exactly what you can see now in the picture. The unit is quite small, quite lightweight, and it was really developed and adapted, having a user-centric approach. And the refinement of the initial prototype was actually really done in BDBD. So Pesito took into consideration the specific needs and cooking patterns of people living in BDBD. So it's definitely adapted to that users. The ECOCA is quite interesting because aside from cooking through solar power, can also generate electricity to power light bulbs, and also has 2 USB ports that would allow charging small equipment. It could be phones, for instance, but could also be like razors and other type of small items. Which is quite interesting because, as Jonathan was saying in the introduction, really combines a little bit the virtues of a small solar home system and a cooking capacity. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see basically that the refinement of the second version, basically, of the ECOCA really took into consideration the specific feedback that was collected by the Pesito team during the first iteration of the prototype. And they have analyzed that basically it is sufficient to answer to the needs of cooking needs of one family. It can cook 3 meals a day, and again, because it has this integrated battery, it can also function when solar is the sun is not out, so even like evening time it functions. And one of the main important points, of course, aside from not relying on biomass, is the fact that there are basically no operating costs associated. Again, I mentioned before that we think that after-sales services are definitely an important element, one, to really protect the customer rights of very vulnerable populations, but also to increase the trust in new types of products. So we really valued a lot the fact that Pesito created a local assembly line that is giving job opportunities to both refugees and host communities just outside the settlement. So we have really tried to push in the fact that we wanted to basically bring the technical solutions and adaptation really closer to the people that are actually using the product. If we go on the next slide, we see why we believed in this partnership between Pesito and Mercy Corps. So as Mercy Corps, we have multiple experiences bringing demand and supply side together around energy products. These we do in humanitarian and development settings, and we have done it before this experience also in Uganda specifically. Pesito is a Danish socioeconomic enterprise. And again, of course, their main mission is to bring off-grid power solutions to the poorest and most vulnerable populations. They started their operation in 2017. And of course, Simon is going to be able to give more feedback around the background of the team, but altogether they have more than 40 years of experience in the renewable energy industry. If we go to the next, we'll see the main vision of the project. So really like the main vision of our partnership here in Bidi-Bidi, which is to provide affordable and accessible renewable electric cooking to a different range of populations. So both refugees in a Bidi-Bidi settlement, but also we want to explore peri-urban and urban settings. Again, because the ultimate goal of this project is to bring the ECOCA to scale, reducing, of course, the price for end users as well. So this program at ELRA was very instrumental for us really to refine the idea. It was a very interesting process. It was very participatory, lasted a few months actually. And we followed up together different trainings to refine really the idea and the business model that I'm going to illustrate after. So in the next slide, we will see the main objectives. And one is increasing affordability through this sustainable business plan that we created together throughout the journey, that also includes a carbon credit scheme. And associated to the product, they're also trying to pilot the idea of a pay-as-you-go for a solar home system applied to the electric cooker. The second objective is again to really localize the assembly line. So we created the first cooking business in East Africa, just outside the settlement. And we are building on that retailer network that Mercy Corps created in the past years in Bidi-Bidi around the solar home systems. This is again like an additional offer that we think it's important to bring into the camp. And through awareness raising, we are really leaving the choice to people to just purchase the product that meets their needs the most. We also wanted to adapt the business model for additional markets that we have highlighted. So again, peri-urban and urban markets as well. And then we wanted to optimize the supply chain and really codify the different steps that needs to be taken to bring at scale this process. The next slide is really around the business model. So Pesito is definitely the parent organization behind all the business model, but Pesito has also created the ECOCA East Africa, as I mentioned, that is assembling and then selling to the end user the finalized product. Again, because scale has not been reached yet, the product has still like a high price tag that we are trying to bring down also through carbon credit schemes. So the end users generate carbon savings that are then sold as carbon credit through UNFCCC. that is issuing a certified emission reduction that are bought then to repay the investment. So we created this sort of a virtual circle that it's supporting the end user basically to pay 30% of the product. Again, like we found it's quite interesting because we are not directly subsidizing the product. We are really trying to push it into the market in a sustainable way, with a long-term vision, of course, to reduce the price tag altogether. The next slide shows the ecosystem that we are putting together. So you can see the dark blue parts are the elements that are already present, actually that they were present at the moment of the proposal. We have filled in dark blue actually a couple of more segments. So again, as you can see, everything starts with this partnership between Mercy Corps and Pesito. Mercy Corps, of course, like giving support both from HQ, but especially really in Uganda, opening up to the market there, and also opening up to the retailer network that we have. So Pesito has created this local entity for the assembly line, and we have like warehouses in place where we would stock the finalized product. Again, through the retailer network, we are training both sale people but also technicians to be able to repair the product should it have any issues, and basically then selling directly to the end users. The retailer network is quite interesting because again, like it builds on what was already existing there, but it really tries to tailor it even further for this specific technology. So we are leveraging existing VSLAs, existing retailers, and cooking agents that are also key for the product sensitization in the camp. The next slide illustrates what was meant to be a pre-COVID timeline. Of course, especially lately, Uganda has been subjected to an additional wave of COVID, so we are experiencing delays. But as you can see, the ambition is really to finish up the project by December 2022, having really a full pool of investors actually already embedded in all this cycle, and having agreements with commercial actors, both in Uganda and starting actually exploring also Kenya. Again, another element that I wanted to stress is the capacity of the product to be associated to a pay-as-you-cook technology, again, to increase the affordability of the product for the lower end, basically, of the client segments we have in the camp. The next slide shows the key partners that Pesito has worked with along this journey. So it collects really both academic institutions to humanitarian ones, and also, of course, national entities as well. So the mapping of the landscape is being quite thorough, and is actually evident that there are many vetted interests involved in this journey. 2 slides down, maybe Jonathan, I think that he skipped the one with the partners. Well, yeah, thanks. So this is really a quick slide on the main lessons learned. We think that what makes our project quite strong is the fact that we have this shared value partnership between Mercy Corps and Pesito. We are very much aligned in terms of goals and ways to get there. We have learned, of course, that national regulations and the different platforms that we are trying to leveraging are essential to make sure that we can actually reach scale abiding to different standards. The importance of having a clear market assessment to determine the different payment methods that different client segments could afford, both in the camp and again outside. The fact of leveraging what was already there, so not reinventing the wheel, it's important and time saving. We also are aware of the fact that having localization of the process is a win-win, both for Pesito, but especially for, of course, the end users, refugees that are using the product. Something more general, probably it's really about the importance of trying to coordinate with other actors, trying to avoid the in-kind donations or distributions, and really trying to make this offer sustainable and durable in the settlement. It's important having a direct approach and building trust between retailers and clients would really strengthen the uptake of the product. And then, of course, like COVID is teaching us that the flexibility needs to be really front and center in the approach that we are trying to take. The last slide, it's really like a quick collection of a couple of pictures of basically the last trip that the team was able to make. So, of course, like some of the key users of the product, and Simon can probably tell us a little bit more, and also really like the sort of direct training that Pesito team was giving to the team in BTBD. So yeah, the last one is just really to thank you for your attention, and Simon especially is happy to take some questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you very much. Hi, Simon.
Hello.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. Yeah, I'm not muted. Sorry. Video. I really like the presentation and how the innovative approach to, I like the carbon credit. And we have questions here, and they are mainly very specific questions related to the equipment. And one is from Samira, who says the warranty period for the equipment, and if the battery are replaceable.
Yeah, I think generally now we work out of Uganda in this project, where it's a normal we would usually go about at least 1 year warranty period. And the good thing and the special thing about having this carbon credit scheme actually kind of tells you that, of course, in order to be able to claim a carbon emission reduction, also the company that claims it needs to make sure that the product is actually also delivering this reduction. So that means there is a shared responsibility between the user and the company to make this product running, meaning that the warranty is a little bit of a funny thing, because if we do not keep the product running, then we cannot claim the reduction and we cannot make the subsidy. So that's why in the entire kind of business model we have made, we do have the organization tuned to service these units throughout the entire period where we are claiming the emission reduction. So that's in this setting where we have this carbon credit scheme, the warranty would actually be there for the entire lifetime of the carbon credit project.
Okay.
And to the replaceability of the battery, actually, what actually happened between our pilot study, our very first version of the Ecoca, to the second version was all the internals of the stove, and we came with this idea for this to be a sustainable model. We need to put the knowledge in Uganda and not in Denmark, because we cannot service on a long term these stoves. So it needs to be very close to the customer. So we actually put a lot of efforts in developing the internals to be very highly modularized. So it's kind of a plug and play situation, and you can assemble the unit using 2 simple hand tools, and also with a limited knowledge, technical knowledge. So that's why we can educate refugees and the host community to assemble and service these units. And that also means that replaceability can actually happen at the household, but also at the service facilities we have, including replacing a battery, which is plug out, plug in. Yes.
Thank you. That's very clear. So it's the warranty lasts the period of the credit or the financing period, basically.
Yes, basically at the period where we claim the reduction emission reductions, for sure it needs to be there. There's of course, if someone destroys something intentionally, there needs to be of course there's a limit to how much we can keep on paying, but for the functionality of the product, yes, it's surely there. Did we lose Jonathan?
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sadiq. Jonathan says his computer shut off all on a sudden. So would you mind if I take the questions and run back to you? So the next question here we have is that how much does this cooker cost, and what income does this generate, and how much?
We have tried to set a market price that we recommend installed at the end user, so all the way at the household. And right now we are down to $500 for that, and we of course plan to get lower than that. And of course this is the issue with technology like this, that we have high capital expenditures for the end user, which we cannot expect them to have at hand. But the savings and the potential income generation afterwards is so significant. So, if you look at the cost of fuel in general with all kinds of different technologies, they're much more dominant than the actual cost of a stove. Also looking at a $500 bill, they way increase that number if you look at a period of time, like say a short period of time of 5 years. You can also choose to look at a lifetime of cooking, what actually happens if a family chooses to switch to renewable energy. But essentially, switching from biomass-based to solar electric, then you essentially remove all costs for fuel, if you have costs for fuel, of course. Of course, those that are assembling for free, it's hard to compete on that. But for those that are spending maybe $100 to $200 a year for a family, you can easily make the calculation. And then we have seen for the exercises we have done and the users we have investigated, that they actually earn between 10 and 20 US dollars a month just alone on the phone charging. And then there's also families realizing savings on batteries for lights and all this, because it comes with the unit here. And then there's all the entrepreneurial families that also finds various ways of charging different units they can use for income generation, like haircutting, soldering, phones, and we've seen many different examples.
That sounds very promising. We have another question about how many cookers are already being used.
Yes, we have. Right now, we have the production is in Uganda is fully functional, and they're producing and selling units to these 30% of the price that Cecilia mentioned, and we out of stock almost. So I think we have around 600 operating units at the moment, and another 800 units on its way out in the field, and approximately approximately 900 of those are in Uganda.
Great. Welcome back, Jonathan. Would you like to take it back on? Sorry about your commentary.
Thank you. Thank you, Sadiq. It's my computer shut off like twice or more a week, and it decided to be that very moment, as usual. Thank you, Sadiq. Thank you so much.
No worries. So we took the first two questions on the chat.
Okay, but yeah, please, can you do the next one, because the chat is not functioning for the moment. I lost the history.
Yeah, sure. So the next question we have is that what are the key selling arguments to the customers, and what are their interest in the product? Thomas asked this question.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're of course afraid of is that they can, if many of these customers, if they can actually understand that power comes from the solar, and there are many that can adopt to those. There's also we've seen families where they, maybe elder families that are very traditional bound, that they do not understand the concept of solar. But in general, in Uganda, it's very wide spread that we see that they understand it. So that adoption has actually not been that tricky as we figured. It's more the actual problem that we see is more the understanding that the solar panel has to be out from the very early morning to the very early evening. And this is that I would say is what we are trying to educate the families, that this is important, and for them to understand that.
Yeah, I see. Thomas has another question. Can you explain a bit further how carbon credit system works, and would the income generate enough income to subsidize the cook stove?
Yeah, I think you can do a PhD in carbon credits in general, but it's kind of a very complex system. But in very broad terms, the carbon credits is that you can generate emission reduction by, for example, switching from something that emits a lot of CO2 to something that emits less or zero emission, and then you need to figure out that device, how much reduction can you provide on a yearly basis, and then for each ton that you save, you generate a certificate. And the good thing is that these certificates has a value in most Western countries, but also many other countries, larger companies that emit a lot, or companies that wants to also make a contribution to the developing countries by purchasing these reductions. So these companies are regularly capped on their emission, and that cap will keep going down. So that's why they will keep investing in actually these credits. And this is a tool that we can use to pay back some investment from some investors, and then make this as kind of a subsidy we put into the product. And that is something that we see a great potential in, and the future in as well.
Sounds a very good business model. There is another question from Mickey. For the adoption rate figure, what time bridge is this over? I think it's for particularly any figure that for the adoption rate figure, what time range is this over?
Not too sure I understand that, but
yeah. So that was my question. It said there was 100% adoption rate on one of the slides, and I was just wondering what time frame that's over.
That was basically our. Yeah, thanks for that. That was from our first pilot study we did back in 2019, where we tested both refugees and host communities, and they all adopted. And then what we kind of learned from that is that we need to have in our model here, we need to have these cooking advisors or cooking agents to go around. So once a unit has been sold, they come and visit and pay a visit to the family, and then sit down and actually make a dish with them, showing them how they actually use the equipment. That has that seems to be a very good way of sensitization, so to say.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mickey. Thanks, Simon. There is another interesting question from Samira. In your carbon savings calculation, have you included the carbon emissions from manufacturing?
Actually, that funny enough, you don't do that. So for all the different stoves that you do, the production on the footprint you actually do, you do not factor into the emission. That's basically what you remove. So that's also why, you know, in the production of pellets or in the production of improved cook stove, you not calculate this factor into that. But it's true. It's definitely something that you should consider, and especially when you deal with batteries. We in Pacito, we are, you know, we have some of the best batteries on the market. That's also the ones that has the highest price tag, but still they are the best for the application that we use them for. And that also means that once the lifetime is over, which is 5 years for a battery, that means that it's down to 80%. It's not a depleted battery, it's just down to a capacity of 80%. And then Pacito has a take-back strategy where we want to use these batteries for another purpose that I don't want to reveal now. But that's how we want to do it. And then you can say, by putting in another battery, then the equipment has a lifetime of another 5 years, and you know, a normal solar panel has a lifetime of 20 to 30 years. So
sounds great. That means you also have a recycling plan included in this?
Yes, we are developing our recycling plan, or take back e-waste strategy, so to say. But that's also one of the key components of that, is to have a localized production facility, because then we actually have the ability to collect these things.
Great. There is another question from Sergio. May I ask about the capacity of the panel and the battery bank incorporated in the stove? Are there any pans or pots required?
Yes. Basically, as we have a modularized system, and we see different applications different where in the world, you know, the sun has different irradiation rates. Depending on where you are, we can scale the panel up and down, and the same we can do with the battery. We have some freedom in that. So the current capacity, we are between 275 and 300 watts, which is also a bit more than we need, but you know, we are very much controlled by what is being installed in larger solar parks, because this is where we get the cheapest panels. So that's the way we use that, and the capacity of the battery is above 600 watts. So it's quite a powerful battery.
Thanks, Simon. Cecilia, would you also like to add something, or would you like to respond to any of the questions?
Happy for Simon to go ahead. Thanks.
Thanks. Jonathan?
My question was related to recycling, so it has been answered, and also the high transaction cost of the credits, but we'll not enter the PhD session here. So, but very, very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Do we have other question, Sadiq, or that's
not in the chat?
Okay,
So
yeah.
We addressed most of them.
So
there's one question from
yeah.
Mahzoub. I think it's the similar question. Can you give briefly about the carbon marketing, as you are mentioning? So I think that's a part of interest.
Yeah. Okay.
I think what's important to understand, especially about the carbon market, is it's you can compare it a little bit to stocks. I mean, it goes up and down, but the trend is definitely going upwards, and there's a huge demand for what you can call premier quality carbon credits, which is not only the reduction, it's also supporting, you know, humanitarian purposes, like the things that we're trying to do, you know, actually putting in a setting where they would not be able to afford these things, and also creating local jobs and something good for the environment. So this is where there's a kind of a niche market for these credits, and that's also why they have a higher value. But it is definitely a risk, and this is also something we need to manage, and that's also why we don't just do it from one day to another. It's something that happens in steps, and that's also where a company like Pacito is very depending on partnerships and also kind of a transition period going to that full-blown sustainable model only using carbon credits, and at the same time bringing down the price of the product by opening up to the commercial market, because it's about scale for sure.
Thank you, and yeah, we are the beginning of this, and we can see that it will evolve over time. So thank you so much. Sadiq, you have other questions?
No, there are no more questions on the chat.
No, okay. Thank you so much for Mergy and SNV for their solar product presentation, and I really like the technical assistance, capacity building, and the way they addressed the IDP, the displaced population, to access the technology, and of course now the very innovative approach and product to deliver sustainable and clean cooking to displaced population as well. Thank you so much. Just for the last session, next session will be Tuesday next week, the 22nd of June. There will be a presentation by UNHCR Jordan to present their second phase projects, which are dispenser to control and monitor the energy consumption within the camp, which hold 12,000 shelters or plus something. And I'm really looking forward to it. And then it will be followed by a presentation and discussion I will lead regarding where we will try to find the similarities and difference between the different solution or project that we found. And we will go through the selection kind of process to see which variables, which are the indicators or information that were taken. And we will also propose some kind of a pre-feasibility study tool, if we can call so, but at least a process in which by elimination, we can kind of narrowing down the type of solution an organization or a person would like to see or implement, or at least not implemented, to see selected for feasibility study or for a project proposal. So that's what we will discuss. It will be also 90 minutes and a break in between the two. So I really thank you everyone for participating. Thank you to Cecilia, Simon, and Mergy, and thank you to all of you to attend this session. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.